All right, Fungal Banner fans, we are back with another guest for the Fungal Banner family. Pretty excited to have him on. We're heading to Eastern Oregon. We're having Brian Valentine, the head coach of Eastern Oregon University, on the podcast. Thank you for taking time tonight to join the Fungal Banner.
No, fired up to be on it. Thanks for having me.
We're super fired up and thankful that you said yes to coming on with us. And right away, a hard-hitting question. What's your favorite fungo?
Oh, yeah, I got to go Devo. Yeah, they do it right, and I like the way it feels, and I find a lot of barrels, so I'm going with the Devo. Yeah, pretty easy for me.
I love it.
Yeah.
So talk us through your journey in baseball. You know, what got you into the game and your path through your playing days, and then, you know, getting into coaching. What made you decide to become a coach and where you're at now at Eastern Oregon?
Yeah, no, I think the sport definitely runs through the blood in the family. Got I have a cousin that's in the game coaching at the Division I level. My uncle coached. My grandpa, he was involved in the community on the baseball stadium in Vancouver. So I think just growing up around it, and then kind of being blessed to have a lot of good coaches growing up and throughout my career. And I kind of knew early, it's actually my sophomore year of high school. I was at the time girlfriend's house, and she wanted to go to UCLA to be a lawyer, and her family asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, well, I want to be a college baseball coach. And they looked at me kind of funny and didn't really understand that answer. And so I kind of always knew I had an interest of getting in, and was fortunate enough to get started at Linfield after I was done playing. And thankful to Stan Manley for giving me my first coaching job. And so kind of got in and didn't really want to give up the opportunity. So I just kind of plugged away, and was fortunate to be surrounded with some really good coaches and really good mentors, and kind of pave the path and guide me in the right way. And just kind of knew it was a passion of mine, and wanted to kind of do it for a living. So I had to figure it out, and we're still trying to figure it out, but we're still here. So.
Well, BV, talk about a lot of transitions, right? And I think just about all of us on this call right now have made JUCO to 4-year transitions, not only as players but also as coaches. And what's that process been like? Kind of going back to you as a player from Yakima to Linfield to now going from Lower Columbia to Eastern Oregon. What's that transition like? Where do you kind of see yourself in your kind of progression in life now, as reflecting as a coach and a player, all that kind of coming full circle right now to getting your big job?
Yeah, I think, I think the transition as a player helped me when I made the transition to go from Linfield to Lower Columbia and move a couple years ago, and then obviously from Lower Columbia to Eastern. And through those kind of stops, I was able to lean on that just transition, and it was really different going from Yakima to Linfield, just from the academic side, the time, the pure baseball time, especially in the fall, and just kind of what's important, but still having, baseball being obviously still important, but just different things that were asked of you at the 4-year level. And then I think I knew I wanted to get back to the 4-year level. I enjoy a lot of aspects about the 4-year level. I enjoy having the opportunity to build relationships with players for 4 years, project them over 4 years. But I really enjoyed the junior college level as well. I think it's a good level, great level even. And it's a different type of, I think every place kind of has a different type of kid and player and student, all in their own good way. Right. And so I think relationships stay the same in terms of building the relationship, being my goal is to have a positive impact on the guys I coach, and that never changed at any place I was, but maybe how it was done, and the time you had with them changed it at the levels. But I'm enjoying being back at the 4-year level, from the recruiting standpoint, the being with your guys for longer, kind of guiding them through that life of getting that degree and whatnot. So it's been some transitions for sure, but it's all been positive.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to take from a player that you can spend that period of 4 years, opposed to 2 years, and building that environment, and building that program. There's a lot of definitely plus sides to that.
Sure.
Coach. But one of the hard hitting questions I want to ask you tonight, we've seen this coming through college sports all across the board, from the Division I all the way down to the NAIA level, but it's this transfer portal thing.
Sure.
We got players that are, they're coming into programs, maybe they don't get along with the coach, or assistant coach, or they think there's something better. How has that kind of affected your way you're going about your recruiting? How is that playing into it, the NAI, where you got a guy that comes in, he's all in day one, fall goes through, maybe the spring season isn't as where he thinks it needs to be. He feels like maybe he's worth a little bit more than what he's maybe putting out and on the field, that is, and thinking that, hey, I can be at the D1, D2 level. So how are you handling those as your coach, as the head coach there at Eastern, as well as your staff?
Yeah, I think first off, the portal has given us an opportunity to add another influx of players, be able to just have another avenue of getting players on your roster, from whether it's high school, you have the high school angle, you have the JUCO angle, and then you have the transfer angle now. And a lot of it before the portal was, people think that, if they win NAIA, they don't have grades, right? And so I think that's changed a little bit too, where, it's not always a situation where they're not academically ineligible at the Division I or wherever, the Division II. We're adding a Division II guy at the break, that'll join us in January, and it wasn't because of grades. It wasn't because of he didn't have he had a good experience. It was a long ways away from home, and wanted to be closer to home, and didn't quite like it like maybe he thought. So I think there's more. I think context matters, and I think you got to do your research just like you would on any other recruit. But I see it as a positive for us as another avenue to get players, and that's I think really something we've talked about as a staff, that's an advantage for us. I think a lot more programs have more access to those guys in Division I baseball that decide not to be there anymore compared to before the transfer portal, just because they're more readily available, and there's less barrier to entry, if you will. But I think all the things that you value as a staff, we value, things that we want to have good dudes. We care about the makeup side. We want guys that are willing to work and not think everything's going to be handed to them, just like any other coach. But I think when you recruit guys, and when you evaluate recruits, and when you kind of go through all that, you still have to use those check marks for the transfer portal guy too, and evaluate it if it's a right fit for your program. So it's definitely a interesting time to navigate. But I think communication's key, and treating it very similar to how you would a JUCO player or a high school player in terms of your process of evaluating a recruit, if it's a fit or not, is also important. And you can kind of sift through some of that context that you're able to find out on why that guy might be available. So I see it overall as a benefit for college programs, for players. But yeah, there's some misguided players that, hey, I had a good freshman year. I think I can go play Division I baseball. I'm going to go to a junior college. And, if at the end of the day, if they don't want to be there, if they're not in it for the right reasons at that program, then hey, it's addition by subtraction most likely, and you got to get the right guys on the bus, and I think that's just part of the nature of it and whatnot. But I think also, educating on the guy and finding out why that's the case, and then understanding their why and talking about it, and that communication side is huge. And if it ends up, hey, this isn't the best for you, hey, we support you, and wish you the best of luck. But yeah, I think communication is pretty huge, and I think even at our level, you have to have a constant communication with your current roster. I don't think we're as I don't think because we don't have a portal at the NAI level where it's like guys are just kind of they're just another guy trying to email a school and get an opportunity, where we're still vulnerable to a certain degree, but I don't know if, unless their guys are posting numbers, I don't know how many people are combing through rosters. You know what I mean? So I think that's interesting, but also understanding your roster too is important, and it goes back to developing relationships with your players. I think if you have good relationships, you can communicate, but also providing a good experience for guys too. I think that's important, where I don't know if coach there's also a time where coaches are at fault too, right? And it's not the best environment for the kid, and that's okay sometimes. And so I think here at Eastern, we're trying to create the best student athlete experience possible that we can. Our staff, which I'm fired up about our staff that we were able to build here. We talk about all the time. Hey, we wouldn't have jobs if we didn't have players. So we're here to serve our players, and so every decision that we make at Eastern, it is with our players at the forefront. And I think, hey, does this positively impact our guys, or does it negatively impact our guys on a whole? Then we can make that decision. And I think if you look, for me, it's easier to kind of sift through when you look at it through those lens.
There's a lot to unpack there, Coach BV.
Yeah, I kind of got long-winded. I apologize.
That's okay. Hey, it's okay. Yeah. It's okay. This is your platform, and you're here to share it. I think where we start is that, like, we think about us as junior college to 4-year players, and I think at the time as a junior college player, you're thinking about what's next, right? What's my next 4-year? Obviously, you have lofty goals. High school kid, you have lofty goals, right? This is where I think I want to be at certain ages, and that might change from time to time. As a senior, I know that generally changes for most guys. But then you're a junior college player, and you're thinking kind of the same way. You're thinking about the next school. But then when you get to your 4-year school, you kind of feel like you have it figured out, right? This is where I'm going to finish. This is where my career is going to end. And this is us in our careers. And I think that's what's changed a little bit now, is that when we got to our 4-year schools, there was some freshmen around us. There was obviously transfers. There's a bunch of different players within there. But everyone at that point in time had the vibe that this is where I was going to end up, right? This is where I was going to finish my career. There was the occasional, freshman that would transfer to a junior college to try to get to the next level. But there was no avenues for those guys at that point in time to be able to move on to anything higher than that, whether that's D3 to D2, D2 to D1. It just really didn't occur that often without that transition to the junior college level. Now that it's open, now it's out there, and there's cases of this, right?
Yeah.
I think, not that the water's poisoned, right? It's not necessarily every single person, but I think everyone in the back of their mind understands that, if I produce, if I have a good year, that I could potentially move on to better. They're not necessarily settled in their minds that this is it, right? That this is where I'm always going to be. I'm going to be stuck here, quote unquote, stuck here. Even though they're having a positive experience, that they can still have the opportunity to go to the next thing, right? So you mentioned that, having the relationships and stuff with your guys, but we'll start here. Like, if you have that guy that is posting numbers that are top of the conference, all West region, national numbers, right? Does that conversation sway from your end to that guy being able to go to the next thing? Or do you let that guy present that potential opportunity himself as that conversation goes.
Sure. And I think I lean more of them presenting that, but to pursue, right? And that's where I have no issue helping them in that. If it's a situation where, because I think about it like this, right? Obviously, we have scholarship, we have athletic scholarship at our place and at the NIA level. If there is something out there that they are being approached by that is so-called better situation. And when I talk about better situation, maybe it's more of a life-changing scholarship amount for their family, or there's NIL involved, and that's where I have a hard time of saying, well, no, you shouldn't look at that, because it's something we can't offer at Eastern Oregon currently. We don't have NIL, and that's different. And I think that's where you elevate. You're kind of in a different sphere, if you will. But I think, having the relationship, having the transparency, and having the communication lines with your player of like, hey, I want to test, because I think it's for us at the NII level, with not having a portal, a physical portal to go into. You're just a guy that's looking to leave and emailing coaches. So, I think that's different than the guy that gets into the portal that's at a Division I, Division II, or Division III. Okay, because there's a database for you, right? And I think that's where we can be of assistance if it's the right situation, and it's something that they've earned. But I think it's more so them driving the conversation, if you will, where. I selfishly, we want our great players to stay here, right? When you put that work in and whatnot, but recognizing kind of where you're at in the scheme of things, I think is important too. And I think that's what I mean by kind of those life-changing things that maybe you can't offer at your institution. And that's just kind of.
And I think I agree with you on that, and just there not being a physical portal. But I think a lot of what the misconception out there of what the portal actually is, right? When a guy enters his name into the portal as a D3, D2, D1 player, it is
Right.
literally your name listed with your school attached at your previous school. And I think a lot of guys out there feel like it's this like field level,
Right.
or special profile type thing that is like an engagement for people to go out and find you, right? But literally, it's just your name, right? So, as a coach, and we went through this too, and I'm sure that you've experienced this to different levels too, having your connections and what you guys did at Lower Columbia. But you hear about a name and then you do your research, right? And
True.
so it doesn't really matter if you see that guy listed in a portal, or the kid reaches out to you, a summer coach reaches out to you, some type of connection with that guy reaches out to you, but you hear about the name no matter what, right? And I think for us and for you and where you've been, like, you only really get excited about a guy if there's some flashy numbers, there's some flashy highlights, some flashy something there that draws your attention, right? That the name attached to a school is not as important as the numbers or the performance, unless you had a previous relationship with the kid, or he played summer ball with someone that you know about. But in general, like, if guys post stuff, right, like, they're not going to be hidden, right? The top players in the NIA West, right? Like, what's your guys' conference name? I'm sorry, I'm blanking.
Cascade Collegiate Conference.
The Cascade, the CCC, the
CCC,
best guys in
baby.
the CCC are going to be posted out there as first teamers, as the freshman of the year, of all those different type of things. So regardless if that guy's in the portal or not, like, that information is being listed somewhere in a social media post, in the CCC website, or somewhere where someone can find it, right? So even if there's not like something luxurious to be able to be offered to those guys, right, their names don't go unnoticed, right? And
Sure, 100%.
so I guess like from that standpoint, like I if you can't offer more scholarship, or if you've already maxed out on scholarship, or if you've given them the offer that you feel like is deserving of that position, and the kid doesn't have NIL stuff, right? Are you going to hold back a guy that has the? I'm not going to talk Division II. I honestly feel like Division II NAIA are pretty lateral in that
Sure,
sense.
and I agree.
But Division I opportunities, like, are you going to hold a guy that's getting a scholarship offer that's relative to Eastern Oregon for an opportunity to move on to the Division I level?
No, I would say not. If there's an offer in place, or even if there's a guy that, hey, coach, I kind of want to test the waters. Okay, well then let's talk about how we can do that, right? And I think I just think that's the place we're at in the scheme of things, and just where everything's at right now in college baseball. I think you have to be able to have those conversations, and sometimes they're hard conversations for you, the coach, you, the adult. But that's, I mean, that's why you recruit. That's why and quite frankly, if you're getting guys good enough to be at Division I level and get scholarship at the Division I level with the rosters shrinking in the future, to me that's bargaining chips to get the next guy to do it. And I think that's something we're taking a look at, we're evaluating, and we have no issue playing a part in that. But the conversation has to be like, is it the right situation? Because the one thing I will say is, this conference had 3 Major League Baseball draft picks last year, and NAIA as a whole is second to Division I baseball in draft picks in Major League Baseball drafts. So if the kid, is the kid a freshman, is he a sophomore, is he a junior, is he a senior? Obviously not a senior, but like senior with a 5th year, or what, a redshirt junior going into his senior year, or whatever it is. I think that stuff matters too, because the next we are the next level. And I actually told a recruit that today, where he's thinking about junior college and thinking about the 4-year, and we talked about, you just got to know what you want your experience to be and all that good stuff. But I said the great thing about this is we are the next level. So when you go to a junior college, we're recruiting the guys at the junior colleges you're talking about. You get the chance to be at the next level right off the bat and work from there with the resources we have in place, with the 4-year experience, with all the things that come with the 4-year level, and being at Eastern Oregon specifically, which I think, we have some really cool things going and cooking. But I think some of that stuff matters too. If it's a junior that, hey, well, is Division I baseball next level for you, or is professional baseball next level for you? And even if it's indie ball, even if it's, do you have a better chance of posting numbers as a senior in a really competitive conference, and maybe thinking professional baseball, because that's our next level, right? That's how we think about it. And so I think that the age plays a factor in that as well. But I think, yeah, there needs to be, we would be willing to, actively participate in some of that if the situation comes. But again, conversation, relationship, and transparency, and recruiting, that's why you recruit every day.
Yeah. How much, Brian, how much do you think that social media plays into this factor of all this? I mean, I feel like as things have changed with TikTok and Instagram, like Kelly was saying there, of course, when you enter the portal, it's just a name in their school, right? But it just seems like, granted, we have, the Power 5 and all these big names. Of course, you've seen ESPN the last few days, everybody's into the portal and these announcements with college football and everything coming to an end. But how much is that really playing into a lot of these kids just putting their name out there so that, maybe they do look for that next,
Sure.
Jake Paul mentality? You have all these followers,
Yeah.
and you got, millions of dollars coming in your pocket because you got a name that's out there.
Yeah, I think it definitely influences it, and it's not always. Sometimes it's a positive, but it's not always a positive, right? And I think, and you hear this a lot, where, especially when I was at Lower Columbia, when we're helping place guys and we're having those conversations. Well, this guy's here, and I raked off him in high school, so if he's there, I can be there. And I God's honest truth, I was that guy. There was a guy that I absolutely raked in high school. He went to the University of Portland. That guy couldn't get me out. And I go, why? How is he at the University of Portland? This guy, he can't get me out, and I'm going to Yakima, like, whatever it is. And then when I got into coaching and got into recruiting, I go, okay, yeah, no, I understand why he was at the University of Portland. It's not about 16 at bat, 16 at singular at bats, right? Against in the high school season, it's a bigger body of work. But I think there's some of that where like the social media allows guys access to more information and to their disservice in terms of just maybe thinking their reality is a little different than it maybe is. And like Kelly said, there's been success stories. So when guys kind of levitate to like, hey, that's kind of my game, or I play similar to that guy, or hey, I'm a undersized middle infielder that has a little bit of sneaky juice, I can do that, right? And then when they have, so I think there's a little bit of that, and I think there's influence, but I think there's influence in a positive way too, as well. So I do think it plays a part in it, and I think that's just the day and age we're in.
I think it's crazy too that like you talk about recruiting needs, right? And you've been to now three places that having a lead role in the recruiting side, and the needs of your team kind of vary year to year, right? And whether you're junior college, Division III, Division I, NAIA, like it doesn't matter how good a player is. Like there comes a time where you just can't take a guy, right? So even if that guy is more than capable of being able to move on, he might not find a spot because there's no one else looking for what he has to offer, right? So it's such a wild thing to be able to be that small school guy that enters the portal and to have success, right? I think that they're all going to find a school, right? Whether that's lateral or upward, it just kind of varies on the guy, right? But to guarantee it's going to work out for this guy when it didn't work out for that guy is crazy. But I guess in your conversations, and you probably haven't gone through a ton of them yet, but
Sure.
as you kind of foreshadow that, like, how do you handle that communication throughout that process? And this is one that I always kind of struggled with a little bit. Like, if a guy is interested in moving on, do you cut ties with them immediately? Oh, that guy doesn't want to be here, so leave, fine, bye. I don't want to hear from you ever again.
Right.
Or do you handle it of a more strict set of like timelines of, hey, if it gets past this date, you got to make a decision. I guess to put you on the spot without having gone through this yet, like,
Sure.
how do you view that kind of that process going for the end of the year, and how you handle a guy, or if you want to remove yourself from it, like, how do you think that people should handle this as a player with their communication with coaches?
Well, I think the communication from the player side, I think if you feel like you can be open and upfront and explain your motives, really, I think that's the best way. But I mean, I understand that if you say it before February, before you've hung numbers, and that could be problematic, or you got to have a feel for who you're playing for and just what the setup is. But yeah, we're a little premature on that. But I will say this: I hope we have good enough players to that want to think that might have those options, because that means we're doing something right, And I think I'm not saying it's a welcome conversation, but is it? Odds are, if you have a handful of those guys, and your culture's right and all that stuff, I would like to think that maybe it's more so because they want to play at the highest level, right? And I think obviously you're going to have guys that are dissatisfied and just don't like the school, but I think those conversations are a little different. But yeah, I think it's a great question of just how do you navigate it in terms of, do you give them a soft deadline? The question I think of to ask them is, okay, do you think looking out for my program, is it in my best interest to recruit your position and replace you? And then maybe you find some truth there, and if it is, then okay, then get to work and go get a guy in the avenues that you have. Or, I think that might be able to give you some. Obviously, it's not the whole truth, or it's not the end all be all, but at least gives you maybe something to navigate a little bit. Because I think they might speak some truth there. But yeah, I think we're still preliminary. Maybe ask me in 7 months. We'll see. But naturally, or luckily well, maybe I shouldn't say luckily, but we're old, so we lose a lot. So all my guys are like, I'm replacing everybody. Basically, I mean, we lose like almost half of the roster. They're old. They're graduating. So I think maybe in a year's time, year and a half, maybe I'll have a better answer for you. But yeah, I think the objective, perfect world answer is probably the coach Gal.
And to add to that, I think really you hit the nail on the head there, Brian. I mean, it's just communication, right? I mean, I think, and of course, I'm not a collegiate coach anywhere, but the thing is that you gotta. It's no different than running a business. You got to communicate to your
Right.
staff. They need to know the roles. You have your sit downs, your reviews at the end of the year. Everybody wants to know where they fit in and where they're best added to the team. And if they're sitting out there trying to figure out, then other options are going to start coming, maybe, or start thinking about different options, but that's the thing. It's like anything, like a marriage, your wife can't just sit there and assume, or you assume of her or him or whatever it is, you got to be open in communication, and you develop that healthy environment that everybody wants to be a part of it. You have a winning tradition, just think about programs that have done really, really, really well over the last, 20 years. Why do kids want to go there? Because they win. Part of it too is their facilities are up, top notch, and their swag and all this, social media and the ESPN coverages and all that kind of stuff. And Sports Illustrated, they love all that stuff. But the thing is that if you can present that, even at the NAIA level, you can give them a Division I experience, like you're saying.
Sure.
It's just all how you want to present it as your staff, and then what your school is willing to do too, right? Financially, for your facilities, and what can you add to every year to what you have there, so that you can keep players saying, I want to go to LeGrand. It's not like a big party town, big, town USA kind of place to go, but there's, as you build that, kids are going to say, yeah, I want to go to Eastern. That place rocks. Not only their staff's legit, they know what they're doing. They're putting guys into the pro ball, but man, their facilities are top notch. And I think that's just what it comes down to, is that are you willing to put the work in? It's like kind of what you're saying there. And
yeah, and I think no, 100%, and that those are all the goals and whatnot. I think I try to work on this every day, and I'm not always the best at it, but I think when you talk about that communication side, you got to be okay with the communication that makes you uncomfortable as a coach, as a leader, as a boss, right? And like you gotta be okay with that, and kind of learn how to manage that. And that's something that, again, I'm not perfect at it, but it's something that I think about, like, hey, it's sometimes it's not always going to go your way, and how are you going to navigate that, and how are you going to support and whatnot. And I think, that kind of plays a role into it too. And I think the last thing I'll kind of say too is, when you're having these conversations with the guys, and the guy that wants to maybe seek opportunities, what's the why, right? And then if the why comes back to all these reasons of, like, I always think about, do you care about the right stuff? Are you worried about the right stuff, right? And so, and every place and every program has that list of right stuff. You know what I mean? And I think if those answers are kind of fraying away from the stuff that matters at your place, well, then maybe it's time to go your separate ways. And then maybe it's like, hey, you enjoyed 3 seasons with him, he was great for you, but he's more worried about this, that, and the other thing, and we're worried about this. Maybe it's not a fit. You know what I mean? Just like you would be in the recruiting process, that you have a kid on campus, and you know, I always ask guys, what are you looking for? What's important to you? And then you can kind of see how they align with your program values. And if their values aren't lining up with your program, then shoot, maybe there's some addition by subtraction, not in a negative way, not in an egregious way, but you know, sometimes that course plays out too. And I think, you know, I try to think about that as well when thinking about navigating this stuff.
Talking about communication and taking this to another level, have you had the conversations with maybe a high school kid who says, you know, what, I want to come there, but what happens if I want to leave there? Or like if they can move on from your university? Is that a conversation had now?
We do. Yeah, we've had them. And I think when you go, especially in the Northwest, and I think Kelly can attest to this, there's a lot of guys that they want to play Division I baseball. They want to do this. They want to do that. And they think that, you know, going to Division I baseball is accessible from the junior college level, right? But what I tell kids now, you can do everything you want to do at a junior college at Eastern Oregon with better resources, better support, in a 4-year experience. So post numbers, and then we'll talk about it. If you want to post number, if you want to come here and use Eastern Oregon as a platform to post numbers, let's have that conversation. But you got to post numbers. And so if you post numbers, my thinking is if that guy posts numbers, you're a better team because you have a better player, right? And so then maybe, hey, he's here for 2 years and understands, hey, no, I love it. Or, hey, maybe I want to be here and pro ball's my next goal, not so much Division I, or like, hey, I really found a pathway that I really want to stay academically and I can get it here and play baseball. And maybe, you just never know what time can do with some of that. But I think being closed off to it is not always the advantageous thing that you can do. And so I look at it like that. But we've had that conversation with a lot of recruits. And we'll see how it pans out. But I think, but I also do say, hey, but I don't want you committing to Eastern Oregon thinking we're going to shop you. You earn it. You put up numbers. You commit because you believe in this place. You believe in that you're here to make a difference. You're here to, create a legacy and build a program, and you trust the staff and that'll develop you as a player and a person. And you're doing it because you want to be here and you can see yourself being here. And if whatever comes, and you're committed to helping us create a championship culture. Mm-hmm. So I kind of tell them, don't commit here if you think I'm just going to make calls for you after your freshman year. You know what I mean? You gotta love the place and love the staff and want to really leave this program better than you found it. And I think that's what we're looking for when we're bringing this next group of guys in, of guys that want to run to opportunity, run to be a lasting legacy of this program for, if it's a JUCO guy here for 2 years, if it's a transfer guy, here for a year or 3 years, or a high school guy here for 4 years, or whatever it is, we want guys eager to make an impact and kind of create a legacy, if you will, as cheesy as that sounds. But I think, we're the land of opportunity, and we want guys that want opportunity and want to work for it and all that good stuff.
There's so many places I want to go, and even in our last episode, we had some conversations about, and you trying to build the culture and the team that we all want within our program. It's very hard right now, I feel like, in the fact of, how do you see yourself managing that? Do you have, maybe we need to ask this question here in a couple of years.
Sure.
But I just, and especially come in, and maybe you can answer in the aspect of like bringing someone in and during winter break. Mm-hmm. And how do you manage that? Because it's still, at the end of the day, it's still college athletics, and it's still your job is winning, and the best 9 players in the field win games in a way. So how are you getting everybody bought in and maintaining that cohesiveness that we all know that successful baseball teams have?
Yeah, well, I think the one thing luxury that we have at the college level and I have is we get to pick our players for the most part. So if we get, I mean, I'll, and this might be a little soon, but like if I'm on a phone call with a kid and I'm just not liking the conversation or the answers or just asking some of the wrong questions, I move on. I mean, I'll be a quick trigger on that of I don't think it's a fit, right? And obviously you communicate appropriately and you don't disrespect the kid, but just being religious and kind of very disciplined on that when you're recruiting guys. We have that luxury. You know what I mean? Where high school coaches don't. Bless your guys' soul. You get what you get for the most part. And you got to make. Sometimes you got to make some lemon juice with some lemons or whatever. Is that the saying? Lemon.
Good enough.
Good enough. Okay.
Got it.
But
Nailed it.
Yeah.
yeah.
We'll go with that.
So I think it starts there, and I think I'll preface this. I think we're really lucky as a staff with what the previous staff did in terms of building what we walked into. We have the amount of good dudes we have on our roster is astronomical. We don't have a bad dude. We really don't have I'm willing to say we don't have really any selfish individuals either, and so that's a testament to Kyle Treadway, who was here previously. That's at Utah Valley now. That they've made our job easier to build that culture and build off of the culture that he created while in his time here. And I think that's been a really fun springboard, if I'm being honest. And obviously putting your own twist on it and whatnot, and obviously different personalities and all that good stuff. But those guys were hungry for it because these guys took steps as a group last year, and they're all back and they're ready to, earn and compete and leave the program better than they found it and whatnot. So that part's been easy, but it's a constant for me. It's a constant daily endeavor. I mean, it's a growing thing that breathes life every day. And I think you just got to work at it, whether it's through individual conversation or asking guys, hey, how's your day going? How's class going? And quite frankly, I there's times where, I found myself a little busier than I thought, and I don't get to do that as much. Right. But I think having the right staff and people that you get to do that helps that as well. And I think, outlining goals and holding guys to standards and understanding this is how we're going to do it. But also, hey, sometimes you got to be the bad guy, right? And not, that doesn't mean like, you got to disrespect a kid or just totally undress them, but if they are outside the standard, or if they're not living up to the standard, or they're violating a rule or something that you have deemed important in the past, you got to hold that guy accountable, just like you did the second guy or the first guy. So I think just being consistent in a lot of that, and a lot of the messaging, and a lot of, just your actions and your dealings with your players on a daily basis, I think goes a long way as well. And like I said, we're really lucky with the group that we inherited. They've made it that much easier for us.
Just your guys' like daily process of work and what you've done, your practice structure, your calendar, sharing information, all those things. Have you had to deal with, and this is not like a bash on anything in the past or whatever, but I think we all go through transition, but have you had to deal with any like, well, that's not how we used to do it, or that's not how I was taught this, or have in that transition of you joining in, fairly late, were guys able to follow your new script pretty well? Was there any kind of clash there? You had to kind of build any bridges? How did kind of that process work from putting your system and your stamp in it compared to guys and their comfortability with what was done in the past?
Yeah, I think I kind of made the comment early before we started teaching anything and before we kind of implemented anything. And I said, and because with this being said, we have guys that are in their 4th year of college baseball that have their 3rd head coach here at Eastern Oregon. And so I think being aware of that, but also, hey, making the comment of you've been taught things in the past, whether it's previous coaches and staffs here or high school coaches or things that work for you. That's great. And there's room to keep doing some of those things, but this is how we do it here now. And this is why. And I think over communicating, I try to really over communicate the why on, hey, this is how we take our leads. This is what we do at second base. This is what we do at the plate. This is why this is important. And so we kind of sacrificed, I would say, some maybe skill acquisition in the individual side in the fall to spend more time in the team setting and just getting our base layer and getting our standards set and just getting our language that we're going to speak offensively, defensively, pitching. We did it all. We put in signs, we put in some things that maybe were early, but we just wanted to get it all in so then we could talk the same language. And so I think sacrificing some of that was important for us. And I think just the explanation and just the why. I think, and I just think guys nowadays have so much information at their disposal, and it's almost can be paralyzing, where they're able to seek why online. And so I think I've found if you meet them in the middle and provide them with a little bit of why, that helps. And whatnot, but it also sparks conversation. And when you're able to spark conversation, I think there's understanding. I think there's buy-in. I think because you know what I mean. It just allows them to conceptualize it in their own way, and then you get a feel for your team. You get a feel for how they perceive things or how a certain individual did some different cues, whether it's offensively or defensively or on the pitching side. And you just it allows you to kind of get to know your guys a little bit. And I think we really tried hard. And when in our first staff meeting, I really impressed it upon on our staff to get to know them, establish a relationship. Don't be so quick to teach. Right. We've got 5th-year guys that have been in college baseball for 5 years, and this is their 3rd head coach. We got to earn some trust. We got to earn some credibility. And that's just how we've kind of gone about it. And so we've tried to bridge that gap a little bit where it's not so much like, hey, this is the new sheriff in town. No, there's some things we didn't budge on, and we're gonna, do it this way, and you read the plan, man. I spell it out for you. If you don't know what's on the plan, that's going to irritate me. If you don't know what the BP round is, it's in the group me. It's on the board. It's been explained before BP twice. I really try to hit, and our guys probably think this guy talks too much or this guy, hey man, we got it. We're taking BP. It's 3x4 on the 12, and the cage group is top of the zone fastball off the machine. The base running's this. We're good. Majority of them. But there's the guys that need it. There's the guys that helps, right? And so I think just establishing we're going to be a strong communication group, I think helps as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that establishing that discipline too with those young men, the tendency for us is, stay up late and have as much fun as you can out of those 4 years you get. And, that's why I was always a big fan of, a young man to come out of the high school, doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. You go into the service, you go, fight for your the freedoms of your country, and you're going to learn great discipline in that. But I also think too, playing sports, and what you do there, Brian, at Eastern and developing that is huge to their development later in life, because, all in all, right. I mean, the percentage of these guys moving on to the pro level is very slim. That percentage is very minimal. And so it's like you're developing these men in so many factors that I think as coaches, we don't really realize, and even at the high school level, I think, a lot of high school coaches miss the mark, right? I think, I understand that, we have it tough, but I think, reverse side, I think college coaches, like you and Kelly, man, you guys have it really hard because you're dealing with some of these seniors are coming in and they were, tough stuff, right? I mean, they were the
Oh yeah.
dudes of their programs and they're like, come on. I was like hitting a couple jacks every game and, I hit, 800 on my team. I was, 4-year starter, first team, all league, that kind of stuff. And so, but the thing is that I think a lot of high school coaches too will feed into that and say, hey, man, you can't. You got to teach them the discipline. You got to teach them, hey, this is the way we do it, and develop that culture so that when they move on to that next level, they can adapt a little easier. I just think that some kids are culture shocked, right? I mean, you
Oh,
probably see it,
absolutely.
right? You get guys in your program, they're just absolute culture shock, and it's like, bug-eyed, fall ball right off the bat, and you're like, dude, your high school program wasn't dialed in very well. But then
Right.
you other guys that they have an established high school program that done well, and they just roll right with it. And then a lot of times those guys are way further in the spring since some of your guys are still trying to figure it out. So I really think that those high school coaches, who are listening, man, that culture is huge to, not only for your program, but moving on. So
Yeah, no doubt. I think also, kind of to that, the senior, the guy that's being recruited, the freshman, that get anywhere it's at. And this isn't, I didn't make this rule, and you guys have probably heard it before, but I follow it. And it's, when those guys get to your place, their freshman fall, they're not, how open to coaching are they going to be when they've been the best they've been, and it's all like, the guy at Tennessee obviously is better than the freshman at Eastern Oregon or whatever it is, but in their world they've been really good because now they're playing college baseball, and so sometimes it's harder for guys to hear coaching, and so I don't always rush to coaching that guy unless it's glaring or if it's getting outside of a team construct. I don't always rush to coaching that freshman right away. I would like to, if you can, let it marinate just a little bit and then let them fail a little bit. And then they're kind of open to some coaching. And we kind of took that approach with these guys, kind of similar deal that I touched on earlier. Yeah, I mean, we kind of call that the other part of that is the life lessons through the game of baseball of just, hey man, you treat this like your job. This is your job. Your job is to be an Eastern Oregon baseball player right now. Like you show up on time, you communicate effectively, you to have good time management. And we'll talk about when we don't have good time management, all that stuff. So I think putting it in that way of just like, hey, you can't, if you do this at a job, you're probably going to get fired. So you should probably make that adjustment. And I think the biggest thing with the freshmen too is, hey, you're going to be shell shocked. You're going to be, it's going to be tough. You're living away from home for the first time. You're cooking your own meals potentially, whatever it is. You're away from all your friends and your people. You're going to be shell shocked. It's okay. Embrace it, but also let's try to make adjustments. Let's not screw the one thing up 3 or 4 different times. Let's screw it up twice and make the adjustment third time, right? And I think the game of adjustments and the guys that can make adjustments quicker, and that's just moving up levels. That's whatever it is, whether it's a job where you have an entry level job and you're a manager now, well, you have less room to screw up because you're now leading people, right? And so let's just make adjustments. If we can make adjustments, that's a life lesson, but also very applicable to that guy in a new scenario in college baseball.
I think a lot of it too is that, especially the young guy, the freshman, is that fear of failure, right? Like they're so worried about how they look when they fail, or just failing in general. Jason hit on it too. Like just the guy that's all world, like that guy hasn't failed very much, right? And whether his level of play was maybe a lot beneath him, or maybe he was bigger, faster, strong. Like you get to college and everyone's pretty much the same. It doesn't matter what level of baseball you're at. Like everyone is generally the same. And anything that they do, whether that's baseball, whether that's school, whether that's, social life, like they're going to default to the comfortable thing when they get faced with that failure thing, especially in the baseball side of it, right? Like, and that's where you get the guys that said, well, I've always done this before because da 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 da, right? And for us as coaches that have been at the college level, like, that certain things that worked in the past aren't necessarily going to work in the future, right? And they have like unbelievable talents that you're trying to draw out even further to make them better players, right? That's going to be failure initially, but it's going to allow them to be great college baseball players, right? So getting through that, like, hey, this is going to be really bad for a minute and you're going to look stupid. You're going to fail, but at the end of the day, it's going to allow you to be a better player where you're at right now, right? And getting through that with them, like you're talking about, creating that relationship, creating the why, like building all those things. So when you have to have those conversations, it's so much easier to tell them that the failure is about to happen. You're about to hit the wall here. And we all know that freshmen are going to have this happen a lot more than anyone else. You tell a freshman when they come into college that imagine you're back in high school again, trying to play on varsity, and it's really, really hard. It's no different in college. Like, it's the same thing over again. But like, how has that shown up a lot for you? I'm sure at LC it happened a lot because half of your roster in general is freshmen every year. But
Yeah.
how have you overcome that failure piece of guys being vulnerable, of being in that position and trying to be, in their comfort zone and taking them out of it?
Yeah, and I think patience is a word that I use, and again, I could use more of it in some certain situations. But understanding that, it, okay, hey, you coach them up. Are they at least, like, is the adjustment what you want it to be, or is it maybe the adjustment's not always there, but the effort to make the adjustment is there, and I think seeing the effort, we had a couple freshmen this year that, shoot, man, they had a long ways to go in terms of just learning how to practice like a college player, in terms of pace, in terms of attention to detail, and just paying attention, and just, I just don't know how much, how much structure they maybe had in they probably had structure, but nothing, you know, like college structure, and that's very, very common. But they were making the adjustments with the pure adjustment slower, yes, because they're young and they're still sifting through it, but the effort was there, and I think that's important, and something that I try to lean on, of like, hey, if there's effort there, that means there's listening, and that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and allowing that to kind of feel your patience, and I say all this where I'm not perfect at it, but it's something that I think about and I try to have on a daily basis. But again, I'm not perfect with it. But yeah, that's another thing about being at the 4-year level is you have less young guys compared to the junior college level, and your old guy at the junior college level is 20 years old. That's different than having your old guy be a 22 or 23-year-old, especially at the NEI level. And that's one thing that I really enjoy being back at the 4-year level, because of that, of just being able to have some of those conversations maybe a little quicker on the development side, whether it's whatever side of the ball it's on. But yeah, age definitely plays a big factor in some of those things, and I think you gotta have that big P word and patience with some of those young bucks, just because of all the things that we talked about earlier, of the things that they're going through, right? And unfortunately, especially if they're a long ways away from home, you're looking after them. You know what I mean? You're the person that's kind of guide them that way. So you gotta have to take that responsibility too, in my opinion.
I think the fun part too is that at the 4-year level, and we did this a lot, that there are certain things that you expect to be taught by your older players, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, like year to year, you might have some intricacies that you're trying to implement from a team standpoint, but there's certain things that, like, hey, we're not going to spend time, hammering home our middle infielder pick look signs, right? Like senior shortstop, like you're going to have to teach the freshman shortstop and second baseman what these signs are. We're not going to waste our time spending time on this, right? Like just a small example there, but like there should be some player driven leadership, with your older fourth year guys. And I know like this year is a little bit different for you because no one really knows how you tick, right away
Yeah.
until you hit a game in battle. But as you build this thing, right, your returning guys are going to be able to teach a whole lot faster. Oh, cat appearance.
Hey, I wonder if he's been there all night. He's back.
Chilling.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, I think you just rely on your older guys at the 4-year level to be able to teach, and have your back and have your voice with what you're doing.
Absolutely. And I think that we're really excited about that going into year 2, not to put the cart before the horse, but I keep talking about our guys, but they've done a good job with that, man. It's crazy. It's crazy how fast they were able to pick up on some of that stuff and understand that, hey, no, this is our time to lead and speak and hold guys accountable and whatnot. So yeah, it is the blessing of being at the 4-year for sure.
It's such a nice, and I guess for us, it seems like in my time of being a high school coach that for some reason it comes in waves. We don't have like 5 seniors, 5 juniors, 5 sophomores, and 5 freshmen, right? No, it's like you either got like 2 seniors and all freshmen and vice versa. And then you have to control that. But like, it's just so much nicer going into a season, right? Knowing that, okay, we have veteran leadership this year. Our first week of practice looks way different than it did 2 years ago when it was a bunch of freshmen. And it especially, sorry, Kelly's cat's wigging me out a little bit, but he's just staring at our soul. But it's, it's so much easier, I guess, to have that. And it makes
just take something off your plate as a coach.
100%.
You know what I mean? And you feel, and it makes you feel a little better of like, hey, you're in a better spot than maybe that it coming from you, right? The message is coming from a better spot, and the culture and the team's in a better spot coming from an older leader or just a leader in general or a peer compared to a coach.
Yeah, ownership is taken that way by the players.
And that's what we all want, right? I mean, ultimately, we want that.
No, yeah.
Oil machine, right? I mean, just guys know, they come in, they know what the expectations are. I mean, especially at the high school level, I know for us at prep, that's, we really emphasize that with our older guys, and so those younger guys coming in, they know it's just, they move on. And then those guys are leaders and they're teaching the younger guys coming in. And yeah, it just takes a huge burden. I wouldn't say a burden, I guess. It's just a weight, just off your to do and trying to build that culture. And it doesn't, I think it doesn't necessarily get easier. I mean, I think there's just, you adapt to it. It's just expectation. You just know, right? I mean, it's just like if I'm a heart surgeon, I'm going into that, surgical room, knowing what to do. I'm not lacking confidence. I know I have support from my nurses and other doctors who are there, and we're going to get this guy, a new valve or a new heart or whatever you're doing, right? I mean, you going in with that sense of confidence and not in question, like, oh, am I going to have that type of support there? Or is that guy going to come through for me when, I'm doing my part, to win the game. So, those just good things to add up for sure.
Well, I think in practice, you talk about that confidence piece. I think there are safe ways and productive ways to build confidence in your guys, right? And with still challenging them and getting them ready for game and all that good stuff, but building the confidence and building, that belief and doing it with each other, right? And I think that's one part where you know, we spent some time of talking about, hey, we got to celebrate each other's successes like we would our own, and feeling that behind that wind behind our backs, so to speak. The guys, you could see a difference in the dugout, and that's just being behind our guy when the guy, hey, it's second and third, and it's 2 outs, and it's 3-2 count, you know, and it's the eighth inning, you know, and then we were blessed to be able to have some fall games to begin some situations to work on some of that stuff. And I think just the message of like, hey, we're only as strong as our weakest link, or we're, you know, if we're, and I kind of put my fist up. I go, if we're here, we have a chance. If we're all together, strong like this, together behind each other, we can weather any type of storm, because we're gonna have some storms, right? And so what are we gonna act like when that storm comes? And you know, I think you can practice that, and I think you can implement that in kind of your daily plans with your guys. And there has to be some natural, you know, occurrences for that. It's not, you can't fake it, right? But recognize it, talk about it, and kind of coach that side up too. I think goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. One last thing before we let you go here. I mean, you talk about your transition from, you know, assistant coach, head coach, first time in the spot. What has your biggest challenge been so far in this new role, and maybe what are you, you know, not fearful, but what gives you the most anxiety going into your first spring this year? And we're really close to it, especially you
Yeah.
NAI guys. You're a
Yeah.
lot closer than anyone. But talk about kind of be vulnerable with us like you like your players should be with you right here.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think the places I've been as an assistant, I've had great opportunities to do more than just the normal assistant does, and I'm grateful to obviously the guys that I worked for, you know, Dan Spencer and Kurt Lipinski, to, you know, to be able to flourish in some of those roles and get me ready without them like, hey, this is going to get you ready, right? And no one's ever ready until you're doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I owe a lot to those guys of allowing me to kind of stick my nose in some things that probably weren't on my plate, and then making it on my plate, and then kind of running with it. So, you know, there was some of that that helped with some of the transition. But it's, you know, you wake up, you have a to-do list, and all of a sudden at 1 o'clock, the to-do list isn't started because you had 3 other things that kind of popped up, right? So I think there's a lot of cool with that, you know, with an example being, you know, being at a 4-year and being at a school that, you know, had baseball, got rid of it, brought it back. Like, we have some older alumni that, you know, there was some success in the 80s and 70s, 80s, you know, 90s. I don't want to leave out an era and frustrate some people. 2000s, all of it, whatever. But there's some prideful alumni, and so I'm going to have lunch, and I have this whole, you know, I'm chipping away, and I have some things to do after lunch, and I get up to go out of my office, and our athletic director rolls in with an alumni and the advancement guy, and they hit me for an hour, and all of a sudden it's 2 o'clock. I haven't had lunch, and then you know what I mean. So it just kind of, it's all good things, but it's just like, oh, I didn't have that on my bingo card today, or just, you know, the fires that you have to put out, and you know, it has been a good transition. But the biggest, I guess, kind of the biggest thing that stresses me out is forgetting some essential like thing, like, I didn't bring lineup cards, or I didn't, or hey, I forgot to order the bus, or I didn't, you know, not that, you know, that's kind of a big thing, but all that's done. But just like chipping away at some of those things that, yeah, I never did that as an assistant. Someone does that, and it's the guy sitting in my chair now of, you know, hey, what do you want? You know, what kind of logo do you want? How do you want your logo on your BP top, or what, you know, I don't know, and then just making that decision. Like, yeah, look, we're gonna roll with that. Like, what if it looks bad? Well, if it looks bad, then it looks bad.
It's on you.
It's on you, but it's on you. Yeah. So, you
The
know,
bus
it
doesn't
just,
come. Whose fault is it?
right, right,
Is the assistant coach's fault, or is it the head
Right.
coach who gave the assistant coach the job?
right. So, like, I'm just kind of, I'm paranoid that, you know, we forget a key, like we forget the baseballs, and I'm the guy that made the list and didn't put baseballs on it, and our guys.
Eric can tell you a story.
Oh my God. Not to mention, you're talking about things, man, that I remember my first couple of years as the head coach of, like, just the pure panic of, hey, where's the game balls? Oh shit. Like, I'll be right back.
Yeah.
What, you run this up, or you get a phone call from a buddy who might be a college head coach. He's in town for the weekend, and luckily he was playing against Central. Hey, get your lineup card because
Hey,
late.
I actually
True story. True story, BV.
That's
Bailed out with lineup cards.
hey, friends in low places. That's great.
That's right.
Yeah.
If only I give him a kid that's logoed one, Desi would have loved it.
Central's not necessarily a low place. Easy there, Rod.
Well, no, you know, it was more of just the same, just to use the same. But yeah, and I probably shouldn't admit this on here, but I discovered the other day I scheduled too many games.
Oh.
And so I had to shave a couple games. And if these guys, and I think one has been on the podcast, so he might hear this. So hopefully he chuckles. But I had to shave a game with a fellow opponent or two to get us. And here I was thinking, you know, not even a week ago we were a game short.
Yep.
And then I realized we're 2 games thick, and I was like, well, I gotta cut 2 games. So yeah, and just kind of like, your schedule is your schedule. You can do what you want in terms of it. Obviously you have parameters, but it's your decision. No one's going to make it for you. You got to make the decision, you know, and it's okay. That's taken time to get used to a little bit of just like, you're the final say, and it's fun. It's great. But sometimes you got to realize that you are the final say. So let's make a decision type thing. So, yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me on, and fired up to be at Eastern Oregon and kind of, you know, build this thing into the future, and excited about, you know, hopefully what the spring will come for us.
Absolutely. Well, seriously, that was fun. That was a fun hour and 12 minutes or whatever we're on this episode of Talking Shop. Thank you, man. Thank you so much for saying yes to us and coming on. Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate you guys. Been a fan of the pod since you guys started it. What was that? Was that that was the lockdown, right? It was COVID. Yeah,
2020.
Yeah. So that was no, I was pumped when Kelly texted me, and lifelong listener, as they say. So
first time caller, lifelong listener.
Yeah, exactly. So
welcome on, Brian.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. We'll have to get you on again. We'll get you on.
Absolutely. Let me know when, and I'm there.
Absolutely. Thank you again. And Jason and Kelly and I, maybe we'll be back to wrap this thing up.